the beginning, around 8000 BCE, many societies consisted mainly of hunters and gatherers. These groups would hunt for animals and food, therefore would be constantly on the move. Around this time, it is believed that Germanic people were circulating around the Baltic Sea.
Germanic tribes really become a thing around 750 BCE and are identified by the Romans. Early on, Germans established themselves in Denmark and southern Sweden. Balts settle along the southern and eastern coast of the Baltic Sea. Then, across the center of Europe, the Celts move gradually west through the modern-day Germany into France, northern Spain, and Britain. By 500 BCE, Germanic peoples are along the southern shores of the Baltic and in the modern-day Scandinavia. Some of these tribes migrate. The Goths move south to the north of the Black Sea. Then they split into two different tribes and conquer west toward the Iberian Peninsula. Then the Franks, moving from modern-day Germany, take over modern-day France. Later they invade Prussia so successfully that being Prussian becomes equal to being German. In the 2nd century BC, Germanic tribes move south and east from Scandinavia. Goths and Vandals drive the Balts out of their territory. Other Germans go south, forcing out the Helvetii, a Celtic tribe. Then, more Germans strike so far south as to threaten Roman armies in southern France and northern Italy. In 101 BCE, they are finally forced back. But now the Romans know that the threat exists. German tribes were migrating to the region that is now southern Germany about the same time as Romans were taking over Gaul. In 70 BCE, Julius Caesar defeated the Suevian tribe and established the Rhine River as the boundary between Roman and German territory. Because of the German fear of fighting peoples and the borders, the Roman governor Varus invades the territory beyond the Rhine and is defeated in 9 CE at the Battle of Teutoburg Forest. By the time 3rd century CE rolls around, many different German tribal confederations are located along the natural borders of the Roman Empire. They've settled in the territories east of the Rhine River and north of the Danube River and the Black Sea. The Goths have split into two groups, the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths. All the tribes make it a habit to raid the Roman Empire. Dealing with them becomes the main occupation of most of the empire's legions. It takes a while, but closer relations are eventually established through diplomacy and trade. The Germanic peoples supply the Roman Empire with slaves in return for grain, wine, and textiles. Early in the 4th century, there is some degree of stability between Romans and these barbarian Germans. But alas, tragedy strikes. Late 4th century CE, the Huns appear on the steppes north of the Black Sea. Circa 370, the Huns beat the Ostrogoths. In 6 years, they attack the Visigoths, driving them out of their territory and south over the Danube. The Visigoths are allowed to live in the Roman territory south of the Danube, but the Romans demand too much, sparking rebellion. In CE 378, at Adrianople, the Visigoths defeat a Roman army. 2/3 of the Romans die, including the emperor, whose body is never found. Scared of the Visigoths, the next emperor gives them more land and officially calls them allies, expecting them to protect the land from other barbarians. It's not until 395 CE and a new Visigoth leader wants more land, money, freedom, and honor from the Romans. To satisfy his rather vague desires, He leads an army into Greece and plunders the heck out of it. It's 401, and Alaric, the leader of the Visigoths, is in Italy. After several tries, he gets Rome. They siege it for a while, but by 410 they enter the city. They are the first enemy intruders for exactly 8 centuries, since the Celts in 390 BCE. After they sack Rome, the Visigoths leave with a lot of plunder, but the city itself is left intact. Alaric makes to move south and invade Africa, but dies that year while still in Italy. His people wander north again, and in 418 they return to southwest France, an area known as Aquitaine, where they are again given land as Roman federates. By 429, they've taken over the Iberian Peninsula. Unlike the Visigoths, the Vandals don't even pretend to be friendly with Rome. December 31st, 401 CE, they cross the frozen Rhine. For 3 years, they ravage Gaul. Then they move south in 401 into Spain. They settle there until 417, where they are invaded by the Visigoths. The Vandals move on south, led by their young king, Gaizac. They cross to North Africa. In 439, they inflict a serious defeat on Romans by capturing Carthage. Gaiseric dominates the southern Mediterranean. He annexes Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, and Balearic Islands. In 455, he even invades Italy, capturing Rome. His troops plunder systematically for 2 weeks, carrying off many treasures. The Vandal kingdom lasts for almost 100 years, until it is destroyed by a Byzantine expedition in 533. Probably the most important of all the German tribes are the Franks, who live south of the Rhine, where it reaches the sea, having moved to the present-day Netherlands into Belgium. They, like the Visigoths, become Roman federates, living on Roman territory and expected to defend the imperial borders. However, in about 430 CE, they attempt to push further south into Gaul. After being stopped by a Roman army in 431, they settle near Tournai, which becomes their home base, from which even Clovis the Franks conquered amongst the whole of Gaul by the end of the 5th century. Clovis goes on to rule over the mixed Celtic Roman German population of Gaul from 486 to 511. After the collapse of the Huns in the middle of the 5th century, the Ostrogoths pressed down across the Danube into the Balkans. In 487, led by Theodoric, they almost succeed in capturing Constantinople, but Zeno, the emperor, sends them to Italy to replace Ur-Surtur, another barbarian ruler. Theodoric arrives in Italy in AD 489. In the 12 months from August 489, the Ostrogoths confront Ur-Surtur in 3 separate battles, but eventually succeed. Theodoric the Great then rules Italy for a relatively peaceful 33 years. By the 7th century, Germanic tribes control most of Eastern Europe. Even the Angles and the Saxons get in on the action by conquering most of England.
Medieval Germany consisted of dynasties: the Merovingian dynasty, the Carolingian dynasty, the Saxon dynasty, the Salian dynasty, the Hohenstaufen dynasty, and finally the Habsburg monarchy. The Merovingian dynasty was a Frankish dynasty from 500 to 751 CE. The dynasty was founded by Cloderic I, the son of Merovic, leader of the Salian Franks. Clovis I united all of Gaul under the Merovingian rule. The Carolingian dynasty was ruled by a family of Frankish aristocrats lasting from 752 to 911 CE. It was based on an alliance between the emperor, who was a temporal ruler supported by a military retinue, and the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, who granted spiritual sanction to the imperial mission. Charlemagne and his son Louis established centralized authority, appointed imperial counts as administrators, and developed a hierarchical feudal structure headed by the emperor. The Saxon dynasty lasted from 919 to 1024 CE. The election of Conrad I, Duke of Franconia, as the first German king has been marked by some historians as the beginning of German history. A problem of this dynasty was that the succession to the German throne was often uncertain or was contested because it was not inheritable, but could only be attained through election by the German dukes. The Salian dynasty lasted from 1024 to 1125 CE. After the death of the last Saxon king in 1024, the crown passed to the Salians, a Frankish tribe. The four Salian kings, Conrad II, Henry III, Henry IV, and Henry V, established their monarchy as a major European power. Their main accomplishment was the development of a permanent administrative system based in a class of public officials answerable to the crown. A main reason for the success of the earlier Salians was their alliance with the Church, a policy begun by Otto I, which gave them the material support they needed to subdue rebellious dukes. The Hohenstaufen dynasty was a German dynasty which ruled the Holy Roman Empire and which lasted from 1138 to 1254 CE. Following the death of Henry V, the last of the Salian kings, the dukes refused to elect his nephew because they feared he might restore royal power. Instead, they elected a noble connected to the Saxon noble family wealth. This choice inflamed the Hohenstaufen family of Swabia, which also had a claim to the throne. The Habsburg monarchy was part of the Holy Roman Empire, lasting from 1526 to 1804. Germany's emperors came from three powerful dynastic houses: Luxembourg, Wittelsbach, and Habsburg. These families alternated to the imperial throne until the crown returned in the mid-15th century to the Habsburgs, who retained it with only one short break until the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire in 1806. The Golden Bull of 1356 provided the basic constitution of the empire up to its dissolution. It formalized the practice of having 7 electors, the archbishops of the cities of Trier, Cologne, and Mainz, and the rulers of the Palatine, Saxony, Brandenburg, and Bohemia. Choose the emperor, and it represented a further political consolidation of the principalities. The Golden Bull ended the long-standing attempt of various emperors to unite Germany under a hereditary monarchy.
Martin Luther decides that the Catholic Church just wasn't for him anymore. In turn, he created the Lutheran Church, starting a big battle of religions, the Reformation. Princes and peasants loved this option, considering they can rebel and have more power they so greedily desire. Now Christianity has suffered a horrible breakup into 2 separate opinions and views. How will this play out? The Peace of Augsburg in 1555 allowed princes to sit down at their meetings and decide to play nice, that their sections of the Holy Roman Empire can now pick their own religion. Yay! They can finally stop being childish and grow up to be mature princes with mature things to think about. Then there was a war. It went on for 30 years, and guess what the name is? Yep, the 30 Years' War. This was a religious conflict because the Peace of Augsburg simply did not cut it for the princes and other countries who decided to join the party too. German Protestants and Lutherans in Sweden thought they had so much power, being they were a new religion and all, and felt strong and powerful to go against the big guns, the Catholics. This killed the Holy Roman Empire, literally by 60%. This is more than half. The treaty in Westphalia in 1648 ended the War of 30 Years because the countries were sick of fighting and probably ran out of money. This again allowed religion to be chosen between the states. Sound like they just copied the Treaty of Augsburg. I hope it works out this time. On good news for Switzerland and Netherlands, they get to be free from the jail of the Holy Roman Empire. Maybe that's a positive. In 1701, a new kingdom arises, Prussia. And Prussia also gets a new leader, and his name is Frederick I. This is Prussia's only time to shine. On good news, the Holy Roman Empire is now getting better and improving after a hard work fighting over religion. Now they decide to focus on other things such as art, science, and industry, and maybe they could be more important to benefit their country. This will sure help their country grow once more from the shameful losses of the 30 Years' War. Also, just to add in, Frederick the Great becomes the king of the Holy Roman Empire. That is so important.
In the 18th century, Germany slipped into a period of provincialism as the Holy Roman Empire was losing strength. Hundreds of regional governments, led by aristocrats and ecclesiastical dignitaries, were expanding their powers, levying taxes, concluding alliances, waging wars against each other, and spending vast sums of money on aristocratic pleasures, while rival European nations expanded their economies and established empires which stretched across the oceans. Ominously, France pushed to expand east of the Rhine. For 200 years, it was Austria, led by the Habsburg dynasty, that defended Central Europe from French expansion. It was partly in recognition of the vital role that the Habsburgs played in the defense of Germany that regional monarchs chose them as emperors with such regularity. The Austrian Habsburgs succeeded in improving the administration, strengthening the economy, and centralizing the government. During the 7 Years' War, Prussian King Frederick the Great preserved the state's power against Russia and France through its military prowess. In the middle of the 18th century, another great power emerged from the Hohenzollerns, a dynastic family which had amassed a number of territories in the north of Germany from the 15th to 18th centuries, including Brandenburg and the Duchy of Prussia. The emergence of the Hohenzollerns of Prussia as rivals to the Habsburgs and the beginning of Austro-Prussian dualism created the possibility of reversing the process of civic decentralization that had prevailed in Germany since the late Middle Ages. While the territorial princes of the Holy Roman Empire continued to act in their best interests, and Austria remained ethnically divided among its Flemish, Italian, Slavic, and Magyar territories, Russia was militarily strong and ethnically homogeneous enough to make future national consolidation possible. Prussia's power and economy grew under the rule of Frederick the Great and his successors, Frederick William II and Frederick William III. But as Prussia resisted Austrian suppression, the rivalry festered. In the first signs of a shift in power from Austria to Prussia, Frederick the Great challenged the Habsburgs' hold on power by claiming the region of Bavaria for Prussia. With the support of the princes of the empire, Frederick the Great declared war on Austria in 1777, launching the War of Bavarian Succession. Both sides struggled for 3 long years, and the conflict came to be known as the Potato War, because soldiers had to scrounge for food. In 1779, Austria ceded Bavaria to Prussia in the Treaty of Teschen. Emperor Joseph II of Austria remained unsatisfied with the results of the treaty, however, and in 1785 offered Charles Theodore of Bavaria in exchange of the Austrian Netherlands for all of Bavaria, a territory that was contiguous, defendable, and with a population that could be easily assimilated into Austria. Frederick the Great viewed the offer as an attempt to upset the balance of power in Central Europe. He sought out the diplomatic aid of France and Russia and assembled the League of Princes, or Fürstenbund, comprised of 17 of the most influential German princes. Growing opposition to the absorption of Bavaria by Austria persuaded Joseph that his plan was not worth the risks, and the proposed exchange was dropped, and the Fürstenbund dissolved. While the French Revolution excited German intellectuals who hoped for the defeat of royal absolutism east of the Rhine, it aroused fear among the German princes. As a result, hostility grew between the governments of Paris and the Holy Roman Empire, which led to the War of the First Coalition in 1792, and after a French victory, the War of the Second Coalition in 1798. Prussia avoided major losses in the First War by concluding a separate peace treaty in 1795 and remaining entirely neutral in the Second War. Austria wasn't as fortunate, however, and was forced to cede territory after losing both conflicts, losing the East Bank in the Treaty of Campo Formio in 1797 and the entire Rhineland under the Treaty of Luneville in 1801. To add insult to injury, Austria owed territory elsewhere in the empire to the German princes who had lost territory under the Treaty of Luneville. In order to carry out this redistribution of territory, the Imperial Diet entrusted a committee of princes, the Reichsdisputation, with the task of drawing a new map of Germany in the final recess of 1803. Napoleon and French diplomats, however, exercised the major influence over the deliberations. Their intervention led to the consolidation of many of the smaller political components into larger pre-existing territories. In 1805, Austria joined the Third Coalition of great powers, determined to reduce the preponderance of France, while many of the German states allied with France in the hope of gaining control over more territory. The War of the Third Coalition, from 1805 to 1807, was even more disastrous than the of the wars of the First and Second Coalition. Following Austria's crushing defeat, Napoleon forced Emperor Francis II to sign the humiliating Treaty of Pressburg in 1805, in which Austria was forced to cede most of its territory in western Germany. Likewise, Prussia lost nearly half its territory. With the weight of Habsburg authority cast aside, 16 of the secondary German states, encouraged and prodded by Paris, announced that they were forming a separate association to be known as the Confederation of the Rhine. While members discussed plans for legislative bodies and the creation of a constitution, Napoleon was proclaimed the protector of the Confederation, and secondary rulers were expected to pay tribute to Paris for their sovereignty. In 1806, 1 week after the German princes proclaimed their separation from the empire, Francis II announced he would step down from the throne, marking the death of the 1,000-year-old Holy Roman Empire. Napoleon gradually forced all 36 German states to join the Confederation, while the regions closest to France experienced firsthand the advantages of efficient centralized government in which equality before the law and freedom of opportunity were accepted principles. One government after another began to remove religious restrictions, relax economic barriers, eliminate servile obligations, and centralize administrative functions. It was the new political unity found under the Confederation and the presence of an overbearing foreign occupier which aroused a sense of German nationality and the possibility for a unified nation-state. Prussia, shamed by its horrendous losses in the Third and Napoleonic War, stemming from a lack of civic support, finally resolved to rebuild itself as a popular monarchy supported by a loyal citizenry. The Prussian civic reconstruction movement led to the abolition of serfdom, free elections for city officials, and a total reorganization of the military. The rise of patriotic sentiments, public resentment over tributes made to the French, and Napoleon's authoritarian rule led to the formation of secret organizations who sought to expel the foreign occupiers. It wasn't until Napoleon was defeated at the hands of Russia that Prussia hesitantly declared war against France. Austria joined forces in 1813 after a failed attempt at neutrality. In 1813, anti-French forces prevailed at the Battle of Leipzig in the War of the Fourth Coalition, and the Confederation of the Rhine effectively collapsed as the neutral German states rushed to join the winning side. In 1815, leaders from Prussia, Austria, Russia, England, and France met at the Congress of Vienna to redraw the map of Europe after the chaos of the Napoleonic Wars. The Germany that emerged comprised of 39 states, with Prussia assuming a pivotal role. The German Confederation replaced the destroyed Holy Roman Empire. It was formed for mutual defense, with no central executive or judiciary. Delegates met in a federal assembly called the Federal Diet, which considered common legislation. Amid a growing call for reform and economic integration, conservative leaders, including Clemens von Metternich persuaded the Confederation's princes to pass the repressive Carlsbad decrees. In the 1830s, Metternich led the Federal Assembly in passing additional measures to crush liberalism and nationalism. After a period of provincialism and slow-growing industrialization, economic depression, crop failures, famine, high disease, high taxes, and restlessness due to censorship, led to the revolutions of 1848, while a National Assembly was convened and changes were attempted in an effort to appease the liberals and create a unified Germany. The parties' bickering decreased the public's confidence and ultimately undermined the Confederation. The constitution that the National Assembly had drafted called for a federal union headed by hereditary emperors with powers limited by a popularly elected legislature. Since the Austrian government had already indicated that it would oppose the establishment of a federal government in Germany, the imperial crown was offered to the King of Prussia, William IV. Frederick William IV refused the crown, reportedly saying that he would not accept a crown from the gutter, basing his refusal on the romanticized ideal of resurrecting the Holy Roman Empire, and reportedly saying that he would not accept a crown from the gutter, basing his refusal on the romanticized ideal of resurrecting the Holy Roman Empire and an emperor with unrestricted powers. His refusal crushed any chance of formation of a liberal government and ultimately weakened his own power and that of the Confederation. Economically, the formation of Zollverein in 1834, a German customs union, sought to economically unify and strengthen the Confederation, bringing economic prosperity into the 1850s and leading to a boom in industrial production and international trade. Transportation networks expanded, and there were increasing opportunities for investment. While skilled handicraftsmen struggled to compete with factories, the rise of industry led to the formation of a middle class from factory and railroad owners, financiers, and stockbrokers, whose wealth derived primarily from industrial activity and whose growth economic importance encouraged its members to demand greater political influence. With the military defeat of Austria at the hands of France in Piedmont in 1859, the Habsburg armies revealed themselves to be weak. Willing to experiment with non-absolutist forms of government, Emperor Francis Joseph instituted parliamentary systems of governments in his territories. Further inspired by the movement for Italian unification, German nationalist sentiments were revived. In 1861, Kaiser Wilhelm became ruler of Prussia, but his unwillingness to compromise and strict conservative views frustrated national liberals. His minister to Paris, Otto von Bismarck, soon rose to the position of prime minister and is credited with orchestrating the ultimate unification of Germany. When Denmark sought to annex Schleswig in 1863, German nationalists were outraged, and Bismarck used the event as a pretense to enlist the help of Prussia's rival, Austria, against a common enemy. William I proposed to Francis Joseph that the two leading powers of the German Confederation should occupy the duchies in order to prevent the violation of an international agreement that had guaranteed their autonomy. Afraid to let the Prussians act on their own, the emperor agreed. And in 1864, the brief German-Danish War demonstrated the strength of the reorganized Prussian army. In the second phase of his plan, Bismarck convinced Wilhelm I to initiate the Austro-Prussian or 7 Weeks' War in 1866, when conflicts between the two states arose regarding governance and territorial disputes. Once Austria had been subdued, Bismarck bullied 21 of the smaller states surrounding Prussia to join the North German Confederation in 1867. Bismarck's triumph in the military struggle led directly to his victory in the constitutional conflict, and many voters, elated over the successes of the Prussian armies, expressed their confidence in the government by supporting the conservatives. Meanwhile, France was disturbed by Prussia's rising power, and when a relative of Wilhelm I, Prince Leopold, became a candidate to the Spanish monarchy, France went into an uproar. France demanded that Wilhelm I ensure Leopold would not oppose his candidacy. Though Wilhelm refused to give a promise. He dismissed the ambassador in a friendly enough way. But when the Ems telegram, a report of the encounter, reached Bismarck, he shortened it for publication to imply that the French ambassador had insulted William and that the king had refused to see the French ambassador again. The French used the king's supposed refusal as an excuse to declare war on Prussia on July 19th of that year. The southern states joined the North in the Franco-Prussian War, and the brotherhood of arms brought a sense of unity that was soon enhanced by the intoxication of victory. Paris surrendered in 1871 after a long and bitter siege, with the Treaty of Frankfurt officially bringing the war to a close. France was forced to cede Alsace-Lorraine to Germany, pay 5 billion francs, and accept an army of occupation. The work of national unification in Germany, in the meantime, was successfully completed before hostilities had even ended. Bismarck had entered into negotiations with the southern states soon after the outbreak of war, and while Prussian guns bombarded Paris, William I was proclaimed emperor of a united nation at military headquarters in Versailles. In the years following the formation of the German Empire, the country experienced an unprecedented period of growth, which, while depressed in the worldwide economic slump of 1873, was strong enough to maintain a steady rise. Kaiser Wilhelm's son ascended to the throne in 1888, but died only 99 days later, passing the throne to Wilhelm II, who proved to be impulsive and an ineffectual wartime leader. Germany's expansionism, especially in the naval and industrial arenas, and policy of realpolitik, or the use of whatever means necessary for the good of the country, caused antagonism with Germany's European neighbors, eventually leading to the outbreak of World War I.
On June 28th, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austria-Hungarian Empire, was assassinated along with his wife in Bosnia by Gavrilo Princip. This led to Austria-Hungary declaring war in Serbia. Austria-Hungary gained support from Germany, therefore making them their ally. Due to Germany's loyalty to Austria-Hungary, Germany declared war. This was the beginning of World War I. World War I included powerful countries such as Russia, France, Belgium, Montenegro, and Great Britain. Later, the US would join the battle. Germany began preparing for war. During World War I, Germany fought as one of the Central Powers, which consisted of Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. In June 28th of 1919, World War I ended when the Treaty of Versailles was signed. The Treaty of Versailles was created by the Allies, but Germany did not play a large role in its creation. Part 1 established the Convent of the new League of Nations. However, Germany would not be allowed to enter until later on. Part 2 of the treaty determined Germany's new boundaries. Part 3 created a demilitarized zone which separated Germany from the Tsar. Part 4 forced Germany to get rid of all of its colonies. Part 5 reduced Germany's military power. Part 8 gave Germany the blame for the war. In 1923, Adolf Hitler and the Nationalist Socialist German Workers' Party leads an armed rebellion against the Weimar Republic. Hitler's rebellion failed and he was imprisoned. However, while in jail, Hitler was able to write his book on his ideas for government called Mein Kampf. Years later, in 1933, Hitler was appointed chancellor by Hindenburg. As chancellor, Hitler began to enact his ideas of government. During his time as chancellor, Hitler began to persecute the Jewish community. A year later, in 1934, Hitler declared himself Der Führer. Hitler resumed full control over the government and named it the Third Reich. From January 30th, 1933 to May 8th, 1945, Hitler enacted a mass genocide called the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, Hitler forced Jews and other minority groups into concentration and work camps in which up to 11 million people were murdered. Hitler believed he was, quote-unquote, purifying Germany. In 1938, Hitler and the Nazi Party begins to expand their territory as they annex Austria. And in 1939, Germany takes control of Czechoslovakia. However, Germany's expansion takes a darker turn as when Germany invades Poland, Hitler wanted to regain territory and rule over Poland. Great Britain responds by bombing Germany and eventually starting World War II. During World War II, Germany was able to capture lands such as Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, and Luxembourg. However, in 1945, Hitler commits suicide as the Russians were close to taking control of the Chancellery. With their options dwindling, Germany surrendered in 1945, bringing their participation in World War II to an end. Later, Germany was divided into 4 occupation zones by the US, UK, France, and the Soviet Union. However, the Allies agreed in 1949 that West Germany should be allowed to have a new constitution. Therefore, West Germany became the Federal Republic of Germany, and East Germany became the German Democratic Republic. West Germany continued to evolve as in 1955, West Germany gained their independence. Unfortunately, due to conflict, West and East Germany remained separated as in 1961, the Berlin Wall was created by East Germany. East Germany wanted to keep Western fascists out of East Germany in order to preserve the socialist state. However, during this time, many families were separated. It wasn't until 1989 that the Berlin Wall was finally taken down and East and West Germany was reunited. In 1990, East and West Germany were able to find peace and reunite both parts of the country. Currently, Germany is a representative democracy with Frank-Walter Steinmeier as president and Angela Merkel as chancellor. Over the years, Germany has evolved and become a beautiful country with many positive attributes. Thank you.